as it's taking its sweet time to broadcast everywhere. Hello and welcome, Just a Family. This is giving you something to talk about, or Just a Live TV. I am your host, Melissa Krechler. I am also an identity coach, spiritual teacher, business mentor, and the founder of the Women Supporting Women Can Network. If you want to check those out, please do so. All of those links are in the description. Today, we are going to be talking about something exceptionally amazing, and that is healthy communication in the workplace. And who doesn't want to have healthy communication in the workplace? Dealing with workplace bullies, standing up and being an advocate for yourself and your coworkers. Not only that, but also creating, as a leader and a business owner, healthy communication to your employees. So today's episode is sponsored by Michieli, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right, coaching. They're offering you an amazing opportunity to sign up for their webinar, which is Less Conflict, More Communication, How Leaders Deal with Difficult People, the 4-step system, keeping your cool while navigating challenging conversations to create positive, motivating, and productive results and relationships. So you can check that out. The link for that is in the description. So to join me on today's episode, my guest speaker is Michieli. Can you please introduce yourself?
Thank you very much, Melissa. I am so excited to be here. My name is Michieli, and I am a leadership communication coach. My background, though, is I spent 25 years in engineering roles in the oil and gas industry, and often being the only woman in the room. So learning to be able to stand up for myself, learning how to communicate. As well, I'm a trained sommelier. And so when I trained as a sommelier, I went and I had this opportunity to work in one of Canada's top fine dining restaurants. And I will tell you, learning how to communicate in a fine dining restaurant serving wine versus being on the construction floor with a bunch of Boilermakers is a totally different language, a totally different personality. But what I recognized, there were still some really interesting behaviors that moved back and forth. And so I then decided I was going to further my skills in learning to communicate better. I studied coaching. I then studied hypnosis and understanding the language of the mind and how that works. And then I've recently gone on to become certified as a process communication model trainer, which is a method developed by Dr. Krechler with NASA on effective communication. And what I learned when COVID started was how I was starting to go into stress and not communicating well to my team and my employees, and that through now knowing the process communication model, I could have actually resolved that stress in myself so that I could communicate better and help my employees and teams communicate better.
I love that. And I greatly welcome you here. My own husband is quite familiar, and so am I, with the oil and gas industry. It is a completely different language. My husband is an absolute sweetheart. You can have a full conversation with him, but if he reverts back to the way if he taps into his oil field conversation skills, they're quite different to your everyday skills, right? Oil and gas, it's, very rugged, very aggressive conversations rather than, calm conversations, very aggressive. And so I'm quite familiar with that. I've dealt with a lot of his coworkers and other families and friends in the oil gas industry, and it's like the trucking industry. They kind of go hand in hand with that. A little bit of attitude, a little bit of cursing, all of that fun stuff.
Yeah. And so it's learning to be flexible.
Exactly. Not only that, I absolutely adore, and I apologize, I can't remember if you mentioned this, but you are also a ballroom dancer.
Yes, I am a competitive ballroom dancer. My husband and I have been taking ballroom for 15 years in American style ballroom. We do 10 different styles. And one of the things that I think was fabulous about ballroom is it really helped me connect more to my feminine side and be able to really own and know my body and the body language, because 90% or over 90% of our communication is actually our body language, how we physically show up, how our hands work, how our eyes, our tone, our gestures, our facial expressions, all of these things work into how we communicate.
Absolutely. I've been, and talking about body language, especially communication in the workplace, I've been told before people meet me, ever since I was in grade school, people will be like, I don't want to know her. She's mean. Like, and it would just be, and then they'd meet me and I'm like, I'm the sweetest person you'll ever meet. Get on my bad side and then all bets are off.
Right.
But I had like that resting face. I'm not going to continue. Yes. I had the resting face, right?
Yeah.
And so it was just me kind of being like, who are you? What do you want? You know, but I also grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. And, you know, it's friendly Manitoba, absolutely. Until you piss somebody off, then they're going to throat punch you.
Just get over it.
Manitoba, right? Like, we're totally friendly until you piss us off, and then all bets are off. So body language is a huge one. Plus, I grew up in a very manipulative family. So it's, you know, you do have to learn body language. That's why texting, social media, email, anything that's done through the digital space is harder to connect to the actual meaning, right? Mm-hmm. My husband will make a comment and like, I mean, he's got some rude comments. I love the man dearly, but he's got some rude comments. And I'm just like, oh, instantly I'm like react mode, right? Mm-hmm. Full blown react mode where I'm about to jump down his throat and hurt him. And then I'll look at him and he's laughing. Right. And it's like, okay, he's trying to get under my skin, right?
Exactly. He's trying to push those buttons, right?
Exactly. But if we weren't sitting side by side, or, you know, even in the same room or the same house or over the phone, even, you can't tell, right? Mm-hmm. Some of those, it's like, even if you put an LOL at the end of it, like you still can't tell.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I want to mention while we're on that topic about communication outside of, you know, body language and that is part of health communication is, and just because of that comment, he added the LOL, just because you make something into a joke doesn't mean it's actually a joke. There is some form or variation of the truth in there. And a lot of the time it's being brought into as a joke, but there is still that truth in there. And no matter how you word it, no matter how you convey it, it's not going to come across that way.
Exactly. And one of the things that's really important is to be aware of your audience, right? And to pay attention to how that person is that you're talking to communicates, because the person opening the conversation is responsible for what in the PCM world we call the channel of communication. And that is, how does the person perceive the world, and how can you adjust your communication style and adapt your communication style without changing who you are, right? Still being authentically you, but to align with the other person so that there's a very clear path of effective communication. And so what I hear is that your husband has this personality within him that's like fun and jokester and likes to really play. And so for him to be able to communicate to you in your preferred way, he needs to have enough of that in his day. And sometimes what happens is when they don't get it in some other form of psychological need, where it's he's being moving or having fun kind of in a play perspective, it starts to come out as these little mini, almost like digs at other people when they're not really trying to intend to hurt, right? But they're just trying to fill that need of what it is, right?
Well, and that's the thing with my husband and I. And he can call me any name under the sun, and I'm
Right.
okay with it, right? Like, you think of the worst possible word that you could be called, he can call
Right.
me. I don't, like, I'm like, whatever, I'll start laughing, right?
Yeah.
I'll reciprocate, but it's not out of anger, right? If he was to walk in the room and say, you know, something really negative out of anger, then instantly I'm going to react. Instantly I'm going to react and be like, no, not okay, right? Or respond, I should say, because I'm quite angry, but I'm responding with logic, going, no, not dealing with that. This is no.
Right.
But for the most part, it does come across this play, right? And he is very much, he's an aggressive play. So, you know, the vulgar, the, you know, inappropriate behaviors, and I'm okay with that, because I get it, I understand it, and it feeds. I'm multi-layered. I'm interesting. So I grew up in a split family. And one side of my family I affectionately called Hicks. And the other side of my family was the prude, rich snobs, right? And you can tell the difference. So I had to grow up and be both people, while still creating who I was in between both those expectations, right? Laid back, open, honest, you know, fun loving, and then very well behaved, very, you know, prim and proper, and all of that, right? And so I was able to create, and through all of my career choices, all of my businesses, all of the things that I've done growing up have taught me how to be who I need to be in different moments.
Right.
And like you were saying, how to, you know, give other people that channel.
Yeah. And so I would say that's one of the things that I love when I came across the process communication model, because unlike other personality assessments, it doesn't describe us as having one personality. It says you've got all 6 within you in varying degrees. And you have the ability to move into them depending on the situation or the person that you're talking to. And as long as your stress is under control, you can easily move. When you are not when you are stressed, you will stick to the one that is your most natural and strongest. In that
when
process.
We're emotionally involved, right? I would say I like the variation of stress, but not even just when you're stressed, when you're very highly emotional, whether that's a positive or a negative emotion,
right?
You're not thinking clearly, right?
Exactly.
You're not reverting, but switching between what's needed. You're going into that comfort zone, right? And sometimes go into that comfort zone, it does create that really negative communication. So talking about communication in the workplace, I've been in companies that have, you know, influenced and thought leaders, and, you know, being a leader means, you know, actually doing it and showing rather than just telling. And so I've been in multiple different fields, multiple different passions, multiple different fields. And in each one, there is a different variation of communication. And so right now, I am on leave. I'm unable to wear a mask in most situations. So I'm on leave from work because I'm in a government position and they still require masks. And so I work for Canada Post. And you'll get a handful of people in that company who are very supportive and very understanding, very much so building healthy communication and outlooks. But then you have the corporate aspect, which really doesn't care about anything. And so the situations vary. Oil and gas, right? A lot of it is not healthy communication. A lot of it is, you know, the bickering back and forth, the very vulgar, aggressive, you know, communications and behaviors and attitudes. And so there is definitely a line that goes in there. So one of the things I wanted to touch on, and I think most people experience this at least once,
Yes.
is when you're in a workplace, whether you're an employee, an employer, whatever it may be, whatever situation you're in, there's always going to be, almost always, one person that you have a horrible time communicating with. They may be a bully, they may be emotionally unavailable, communication unavailable. And I really wanted to touch on that. So the part that I wanted to touch on, because I know you'll have the communication aspect of that. For mine, it's the mentality. For somebody normally, and not always, but normally, it's been my experience and something that I teach is when you're dealing with somebody who's very hard to deal with, whether that's in a bully aspect or very negative or very aggressive situation, they're dealing with something.
Exactly.
And they've reverted into that that space, that body language, that mentality, emotional, energetic of leave me alone.
Right.
And whenever somebody comes into that space, it's an attack, right? It feels like an attack. It feels really negative.
Right.
I'm going to give you a couple examples for anybody watching or watching the replay that I have one person that I've been in contact with who is very internally unhappy with self and very outgoing, very loving, very friendly, beautiful person inside and out, does not like themselves. So any comment on their appearance, on their behavior, on their attitude is taken negatively. Even if it's a compliment, is taken negatively, right? And they internally will shut down. And so any communication, no matter, again, positive or negative, they internalize it, right? I have another one where if you are going through a very stressful home period or a very stressful situations, if you're trying to have a conversation with somebody, no two people think exactly the same, right? Nobody experiences something exactly the same. So if there's a lot of high stress at your job, at your home, that does get brought into other areas. And when you try to talk to somebody or try to express your beliefs, your emotions, it feels like an attack, right? And then it's defensive and
Yes. And then we go down the rabbit hole of miscommunication,
and I think
right?
Not enough people understand that we're all going through something.
Yeah.
And just because we don't understand it or we don't see how we're going through it, we need to understand that everybody's going through something.
And I think that's one of the things I really started to learn when I started doing hypnotherapy. Because as I started to help people unwind some of the messages in their mind, I became more compassionate, I would say, more aware of, oh gosh, I would have never thought that that person had had that experience, right? And so we as people don't necessarily share all the baggage that's inside of us with everybody out there, right? Like I grew up in a place where the stories in your house were the stories in your house, right? Like they didn't go outside the four walls of your house, right? Yeah, exactly, right? So there are things that people have gone through in life, and I'm really blessed to have had a very good upbringing, but my upbringing was different than other people's upbringing. And it's interesting, as I have done hypnosis with people and helped them gain more confidence, is just what are some of those underlying messages within their own minds that show up in their everyday presence. And so that is one thing that I would agree. We don't know what's going on in somebody's head, even from day to day. I actually did a post on this today on LinkedIn, right? Is that is to spend more time in just a relaxed conversation, because you don't know if that person was staying up all night with a teething baby, right? And they're just tired and exhausted, right? Or maybe they're having a fight with their partner and they're worried about, are we going through divorce? Are we, right? We don't air all of these things on a daily basis, right? But as soon as that person reacts badly, we then just start to put like a negative thing on them. Now, if somebody's reacting badly,
or,
right?
They're rude, there's so many different things that we assume because we're on the outside looking in. We're not even, we're not even dealing with that person's everyday life.
Exactly, right? And so taking time, especially in work, because you spend 8 to 12 hours a day typically with somebody in the work environment, right? And that's probably more than you even spend with members of your family.
Yeah.
Right. And so these people have a big impact on you, and our work relationships are really important. So if we have somebody that's difficult, or if we have somebody that's struggling, we tend to kind of potentially react more to that than we necessarily should. There's something interesting also known as, and I want to get back to your first point in a minute, but there's something also known as the drama triangle. And so the drama triangle indicates initially that there's two people in the situation. One person is the prosecutor, and the other person is the victim. And typically in life, those people play those roles in multiple relationships, not just necessarily in one or the other. And really what the prosecutor is they don't recognize the power that they necessarily have over the person when they're communicating. And the victim typically uses their vulnerability and doesn't show up and own and be accountable for their actions within the results. And then what causes this to be a drama is that a third person comes in and tries to rescue. And the rescuer initially is trying to help the victim, right? But then if they get frustrated in that pattern with the victim, they then become the prosecutor, or they become the prosecutor to the prosecutor and make that person the victim. And we end up in these triangles of people trying to help out. And really what we've got is a communication issue happening between the first two people. And so I was thinking about your first story that you were saying. And when we typically have somebody who we're struggling to relate to, it is usually due, and this is one of the things out of T.B. Kaler's research in the process communication model, is that the personality type that is the weakest in us is the one that we struggle the most with. So for example, in my personality structure, my structure according to T.B. Kaler is I'm very logical. Then I work on very action oriented. Then my next is fun and spontaneity. I move up into something that's kind of reflective, then emotional, and then strong beliefs and opinions. So for me, when I'm around somebody who's got strong beliefs or opinions, or crusading, like really trying to must be this way, very strong black and white, I'm like, that takes a lot of energy for me to move and connect with that person. And the same is true of, I have lots of friends who are great from an emotional standpoint, but really struggle in the logic standpoint. And they find that people with that personality type much harder to connect with. So one of the first things is starting to recognize your personality structure and how you can adjust to the way they are communicating. So it's not necessarily what they're saying, but it's the way that they're saying it, to help be aware of the way they're saying or sharing their information. And so what I love about this method that I now have the privilege and opportunity to teach and help people with is I can help them recognize where they are strongest, where certain triggers for them will come off, and how they can start to adjust their communication back and forth with people so that you can get more effective conversation.
Is there a link or a survey or quiz that somebody could take to find those out?
So the profile that is done through Krechler Communication is actually a very well developed psychological test, and so you need to do it through somebody like me or one of there's I think 5,000 coaches around the world who do this, and so you would need to come in through one of us. We would spend the time with you because we want to make sure that the profile represents you correctly and has been done accurately. So
yeah. That'd be interesting. So I like that profile. And I absolutely validate it. It sounds very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
For myself, I would question it because I attract all different kinds of people.
Yeah, you will.
And it's interesting because I can when you were going through the different types, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're going, okay, well, I've dealt with those. I'm friends with like all of those types, right?
Exactly.
I hold and see that's the funny. I'm eclectic in everything. I'm eclectic,
right?
And so my friendships are eclectic.
Yeah.
And the one thing, or actually the two things that are a hard no in my relationships. Number one, hypocrisy. Can't stand it. I am absolutely and utterly not okay with hypocrisy. The second being judgment. I understand it, and everybody is absolutely entitled to their belief. But when your beliefs are perceived to be better than mine, and you make that clear and known, that's another hard no. Hypocrisy and judgmentalness, right? So that are my hard no's.
Approximately 10% of the population perceive the world through judgment and opinion. That being said, as long as you talk opinion to opinion, they're okay. You don't have to agree with them. It's a matter of being able to confidently state your opinion like you just did and say, these are my beliefs and my values. What do you think about that? Right. And so it's really about not that you have to change who you are authentically, but show up and go, okay, I know that this person is very, very strong in beliefs and opinions. It's the same for me. I struggle with people who are very strong in judgment and beliefs and opinions. That being said, my best friend's husband is one of those people, right? And we get along really, really well because I've learned how to be able to speak in a language that is easy for him and that is relaxing for me. And so we have really good communication. We're able to have really good conversation because I'm able to move into that space.
We'll meet him where he's at, right? And that's one of the things we love to highlight on the show is having the ability to meet people where they are, right?
Right.
Just because I believe a certain way, so if I have a conversation, and you and I talked about this, every pre-screen I do, I make sure that this is very well known, is that I like differing beliefs. I like having a conversation with somebody and disagreeing with them. I'm not disagreeing with the validity of their belief. I'm not belittling, judging, or trying to change their belief. Having communication, and this is one of the biggest points for me on healthy communication. And one of the things I adore highlighting is that if I'm having a talk with somebody, and I'm going to use my pre-screening interviews as a general analysis, is one of the things that I say is, if during this interview you feel that you and I don't vibe, or I feel that we don't vibe, there is no offense given, no offense taken. You are entitled to say no. And I'm okay with that, right? The second part is when it comes to the passion topics that we host on the show, the stories that we host on the show, one of the things that I make known is, if we can't agree on a topic, there's nothing wrong with that. Your topic is still valid. I don't feel the need to change your belief or to convert you to my way of thinking. And vice versa, right? It's not something it's not something that needs to be done. And society nowadays has made communication all about, we're empowering society. And this is huge for communication. We are building an empowered society. But what the negative aspect of that is all the people who feel empowered to share their voice, to share their topics, to share their beliefs, are putting hard no's in that. Sorry, something was vibrating my desk. There's a hard no. There's a difference between, okay, my beliefs are my own. I love, accept, and validate your beliefs as your own. Right?
The reality is creativity. And one of the things that is so important in workplaces, especially, is what's known as psychological safety. And this is where people can voice their ideas, their beliefs, what they think, without receiving any negative impact to their career and their life, right? Now, it's not to be able to say things in a mean and unjust way, right? But it's to be able to raise things to the table. And it's because of this that we can actually create corporations being better, being more successful, being more creative, because when we take different ideas and allow people that freedom to speak up and say things that they're thinking about, right? That allows us to improve the culture. It allows us to get better, which is why effective communication is like the key to psychological safety. And there's a great book, and I don't know if you've ever read it, but called Creativity Inc. It's written by Ed Millett, I think is his name. He is, and it's all about Pixar. And so Pixar worked really, really hard to make sure that they're probably one of the first companies to really get the concept of psychological safety, and worked really hard to make sure that people could come to rooms, and they had something called the brain trust, where people would just give feedback, right? And they said at times it would get really loud. That was like common, but there was nothing ever done in offense. It was just to give ideas and suggestions and feedback. And they're like, ideas always start out like terrible. Like their movies, their ideas start out terribly. And if they didn't have people speaking up and comfortable to say what they were thinking, they would not be able to create the great movies that they have, be able to tell the stories and connect really well, because they developed this process in this culture in their organization. But one of the things he recognized was that and I've seen this in other organizations, where some of the team actually felt like they were second-class citizens. And he was really shocked as the leader for this, because he's like, what is it that we're not doing? So the artists and the creativity team who really put what we see on the screen, right, were like, had this great relationship, but they had treated the producers and the project managers who kept everything on time and budget as kind of second-class citizens. And so he worked, and this book tells the great stories of what they did to overcome this, because they were like, nobody in our corporation should ever feel like a second-class citizen. everybody should have a voice, right? Everybody has a purpose and an activity to do. And so I thought that that book is really a great book at understanding the insight to how you create a culture of open and effective communication.
Absolutely. One of the things I was writing down is empowerment is creating a divided humanity.
Yeah.
You think of society right now, or humanity right now, trying to bridge the divide, trying to bridge racism, homophobia, all of this, feminism,
right,
sexism, misogyny, all of this is trying to be bridged by this divide, right? What's actually happening is we're creating more of a divide, right? And I see it everywhere. I see it in racism. I see it in feminism and sexism and misogyny and empowerment. Even something so amazing as being empowered is actually doing more harm than it is good. The feminist movement. And I'm doing an episode on this at the end of the month, literally the 31st, is I'm all for equality. For equality. And I mean equality across the board. We are entitled, we have the right, we have the responsibility, we have the capability of creating a life that we love that makes us happy. But what's happening now is we're teaching people empowerment, right? And to use your voice, to speak your voice, to live in your beliefs, to honor and express your beliefs. What ends up happening, and this is in the workplace even, is that it does become, I'm better than you. It does become, there's a lot of that going on. Feminism, right? And I'm going to use that one as an example. I love the true feminist movement for equality.
Yeah.
But what has happened is a lot of the feminists and a lot of the, not a lot, but some that I've noticed have been, instead of equality, they want domination.
Yes.
There's a lot of feminism that want domination. You subjected us to years and decades and centuries of domination. It's our turn. You're going to bow down to me. That's not how it's supposed to be.
No, I agree with you. Yeah.
And you're seeing that with the LGBTQ community. You're seeing that with the spiritual community, the empowerment community, the self-help and development community. All of these communities, which are supposed to be about inclusivity, love, acceptance, judgment-free space, is actually becoming, dictatorships, dominations, right? Religious cults that are telling us that we have to be a certain way, we have to talk a certain way, act a certain way, be a certain way. I watched a video of a woman a few weeks ago, transgender woman, who said, you told me that I was a woman. You told me that I was acting feminine. You told me that I wasn't allowed to wear pink as a boy. I wasn't allowed to play with dolls. I wasn't allowed to do this. So I transitioned into a woman. Now you're telling me that's not okay? That I'm not actually a woman?
Yeah.
It's becoming, and in the workplace, in society, in humanity, in cultures, in spiritual groups and religious factions, and and I get, as you can see, I get horrendously passionate about that, because everything that I do, and I mean everything that I am a multi-passionate. I have 6 businesses, and that's not a promotion. That's to tell you, I literally have 6 businesses. I am an identity coach. I'm a spiritual teacher, a business mentor. I've created this show. I have products. I have, I've created the Women Supporting Women Network, and everything that I do revolves around inclusivity, support, judgment, freedom, all of it, self-love, acceptance for who you are, where you're at, what you're going through, how you communicate, and it drives me batshit crazy. I see all of these divides because we're trying to create an inclusive society, humanity. And it's
Yeah.
not working because you get people in charge who are not for that. They've climbed the ranks because they want to dominate.
Right.
That's not the
Right.
leaders we need in power.
No, and we need leaders who are willing to listen and be inspired by difference. Right? That's really what to me is great. And that is through learning how to communicate well, right? Learning how to see other people's perspective. Doesn't mean you have to agree with other people's perspective. It just means you have to be willing to listen and learn how to communicate in a way that allows the different perspectives back and forth, and not use manipulative tactics, right, to get what you want. And that is what leads to drama, when we start to use manipulative tactics to try and push a subject or push a philosophy through. And when we do that, right, that's when we get these silos of different people. Mm-hmm.
You don't like it, leave. You don't follow the rules, you're not part of my group or community. It's like we're in grade school all over again.
Exactly.
Right? If you can't fit the rules or conform, then you're not involved.
Right.
Right? You can choose to leave, or we'll make your life horrible so that you end up leaving. Right?
Right.
And businesses are horrible for that. Right? Not just businesses, but since we're talking about healthy communication in the workplace. One of your main focuses, and this goes hand in hand with the offer that your company is providing today, is you help people talk like a leader. And that's so valuable. I am a small city girl in Manitoba, Canada, right? But I have the passion, the love, the dedication, the commitment, the ability to be a leader, because I see it from all different perspectives, right?
Yeah.
The Met Gala. Oh my goodness. The Met Gala was the other day. And the Grammys, the Oscars, the Met Gala, it's going to continue throughout the year, however award ceremonies we have.
Yeah.
It's all, who was the worst dressed? Who was the best? Who effing cares?
I know.
Right? Like, you go to work. Okay. So I like working from home. One of the reasons I absolutely love working from home, and I haven't done this on any of my videos yet, is I can wear whatever I want, right? So I can wear leggings and a tank top, and as everybody sees my cleavage, so I apologize. You kind of can't help.
I get it.
Where the sisters go, okay? They have a mind of their own. And you can't see that now, but yeah, if you bend over, they're guaranteed, right? But I get to be who I want. I'm doing this, no makeup, right? My rosacea is on full display. You saw me doing my, fig bun in, whatever. It's not fake, it's actually my hair, but I can show up authentically, right? And when people show up for me, when people show up on the show, when people show up in my workspaces, I want you to be authentic.
Yeah.
That's the whole purpose of the show, sharing our stories to inspire. And if this show does nothing else but two things, these are the two things I want the show to do. This episode specifically. Number one, understand that everybody is going through something, whether you understand it, whether you agree with it, whether you think it's crap or common sense or whatever, keep your mouth shut. You are not in their shoes.
Yes.
Give them some grace.
Yes.
Number two, it is our responsibility to hold ourselves accountable for our actions, our behaviors, our thought processes, our emotions, our responses and reactions, the way that we interact with other people, and our ability to create that space? I'm gonna be quiet for a minute.
So yeah, I'm gonna make 2 thoughts in relation to that point. So the first thing is, when somebody is dealing with something as a leader, it is your job to not avoid the situation. Because if somebody is behaving badly in the workplace, right, regardless of whether they're going through something, it's really affecting all of your staff. And one of the things that I see historically is that because leaders don't know how to recognize distress patterns within their staff and be able to offer and invite them out of conflict or out of what it is so that they can show up and be the best, they avoid it because they're afraid of getting emotional. They're afraid that somebody's going to get violent with them. They're afraid, right? Like there's like this long list of fears. But as especially in a management position, because you don't have to be a leader to be in a management position, right? But as somebody in a management position, it is your accountability to have some conversations with that person and learn how to use effective communication to help invite that person out, right? So that's kind of my first thing to think about is that leaders don't own that role really, really well. And I would really like to see leaders. Part of the reason why I want to go in and train is because I've worked in many companies where somebody has been in it and you can see the distress in them, and that distress is showing up as bad behavior. So for example, I had a pipe fitter who was working for me when I ran turnarounds, and this young man was doing it because his wife had put pressure on him that she wanted him to be more of a white collar boy than a blue collar boy, right? There was like this weird dynamic happening at home. But one of the things that brought him great joy out of his role in welding was that he needed solitude in his day. And so for him, in the role that he was trying to do, needed him to interact. And so he started taking sick days. He was like he had all of these demands. And I had to spend quite a bit of time helping him recognize why he was great in this job and struggling in this job. And it wasn't because he was a bad person or there's something wrong. It was just that his personality, what brought his psychological needs in a great space was having solitude. And it was a lot of work because even my boss at the time was like, no, you should keep letting him try. And I'm like, he is struggling. He is not doing well. And we're putting him through something that is just so counter to what makes him great. I had another woman working for me, and she had years and years of experience. And we had taken her partially out of a job, but not fully out of a job, brought someone else in. And so she felt lost in what she was doing, right? And so this strong anger, people were like, oh my God, we don't want to deal with her. And the old job she didn't like to do, but there was a space in our company where she was exceptional. And so I was able to transition her into that role. And all of a sudden, people are coming up to me going, what did you do to her? And I'm like, I helped her find her fit where she could be her best. And when she did that, she performs really well. Mm-hmm. I know for me, when COVID happened, all of a sudden my role came to terminating all of my electricians who were in the field, shutting down a major project, taking staff and having to lay them off, right? Doing things where my need is around time and structure. That's my psychological need. And that's what makes, if I have time and structure, it works really well. And so I was losing all of this. All of this was starting to stress me out. And I actually blew up at somebody, not intentionally, but I could feel the vibration happening in my body, right? Because of all of the stress that was coming on. And I felt so bad afterwards and so exhausted afterwards. And it was just like this concept that we don't necessarily know what the other person's going through, what they're experiencing. And if we can figure that out as a leader, it's our job as leaders to help learn how to communicate, learn how to recognize this, and help invite that person into a space where they can be at their best.
Yeah. And I love that. While you were talking, I was thinking about my own daughter in the first scenario. She walked into the house one day, and she's very much about her electronics. So my mother-in-law will come in the door and say hi to her, and she won't answer. She won't answer. She won't answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's totally fine for her, right?
Yeah.
So she comes home the other day, and my mother-in-law and I are on our way outside to go have a cigarette. And my daughter comes in. I kind of nod, acknowledge, and walk away. Like, we're already on our way out. And I had watched her walking up to the house. And as she's walking up to the house, I see her cursing under her breath. And I'm like, okay, so today is going to be that day. And so I come back in, and she's, all of a sudden I walk into the kitchen where she is, and she's just laying into me. And I said, excuse you, little girl. I said, let's back that train back up. Right. Cause of course, and I said, what's the issue? Right? Like, calmly, what's the issue?
Right.
She says, you didn't say hi to me. She said, neither one of you said hi to me. And I'm like, so now as a parent, right? And even as an individual, I'm like, dude, you just disrespected me. My tolerance levels like through the roof. Right. So I'm just like, nope, gone. But I sat back and I'm like, okay, so I could have reacted. And reacting, I could have reacted emotionally and said, that's not acceptable. You need to apologize right now. And I could have flew off the handle, right? Mm-hmm. But instead I sat there and I'm like, you need to think about this for a second. I said, you come home, and because I didn't say hi to you because I was walking away to do something else that I was already doing, you're angry with me. Mm-hmm. He goes, yeah. And I said, so the amount of times that your grandmother tries to say hi to you and you ignore her, I said, that's okay. Well, I said, I'm going to stop you right there. I said, I know that you've had a horrible day. I said, I can tell that you've had a horrible day. And you are picking the fact that I didn't say hi to you as your explosion for you having a horrible day. I said, if you would like to talk about your day, vent about your day, or get some insight into what's going on during your day, you can absolutely come to me and said, Mom, I have a really bad day. Can you help me out? Can I just vent? Can you listen? Whatever you need. I am here. I said, but you don't get to walk in this house and take that bad day out on me. That's not acceptable. And I don't know how many retail, we did an episode on retail quite some time ago. And one of the big things is if I walk into a retail location and the retail staff is giving me attitude or they're not happy, I sit there. Even a hospital, I've had it happen. And I walk in and they're just rude. And I'm like, I get that you might be having a hard day. I get that you, however it is that you're feeling or whatever is going on in your life, but I do not deserve to be the recipient of your explosion. Right. And I hold people accountable to that. Right. Because I am a very volatile, vindictive person. I can be. I know that about myself. And I hold on to that. Right. And I hold space for that when I need to. If you ask any one of my children, anyone, all four of them. The first thing I do when I'm angry or I'm in a bad mood is I will say, I am angry. You need to back off and leave me alone until I have had time to calm down. And then I will talk to you. I said, if you continue to push me right now, I will lash out. And I don't care whether your feelings get hurt because that will be my intention. I said, I am trying to avoid that. You need to respect the fact that I need time. And I will put myself on a timeout. And that's what I need.
Exactly. And so we all have these things that are known as psychological needs. And those are the needs that will bring the joy back into us. So for you, it's a timeout. For some people, it's like they just need to go for a walk in nature, right? For me, I just need to do something productive for like 20 minutes where I can actually do and see me accomplish something, right? So we all have these different needs. And one of the things that I really learned through this process was what my needs were. What are the things that I need? And what is it that if somebody said it to me would help me move from being in a distressed state to a positive state? So those are really helpful tools. The other thing I think is if somebody's being horrible to you, I kind of describe it in two different ways. So one that I took from my Jack Canfield training, and it's like, if I said to you, you know, that green hair that you currently have is the ugliest green hair, you're gonna like look at me going, what is wrong with her? Like, I do not have green hair, right? I do not, like, this is not me. Part of the reason some of those sting is because for some reason we're accepting that thing. So if somebody's saying something to you, I have people go, reconsider what they're saying to you as you having ugly green hair. And you know 100% that you don't have ugly green hair. So whatever it is they're saying is theirs. The other is consider the negative feedback as a gift. And it's in a box and they're giving it to you. And your choice is to either accept the gift or just drop it on the ground and let it be, right? And so the more we can start to own our response to even a negative comment, like what I'm hearing you do with your daughter, it's like, okay, I'm going to own my response. I'm going to calmly communicate to her, right? And not get pulled in, not accept the gift that she's offering me.
Yeah. And that's the thing. It is. I know a lot of, even my family is very much, you can tell when they're pulling you into a fight because they need to express. And that's the thing. A lot of the time when you're pulled into a fight, it's not because you've done anything wrong. You might have, you might not even know it. But a lot of the time when somebody pulls you into a fight, it's because they have unresolved issues or feelings that they want to express. And you're not allowing them to.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
I had an experience with somebody the other day where they had done things. I had made a decision. They had done things and it was like, no, just pushing buttons, right? Just pushing buttons. And I'm like, no. You don't need to push buttons. You know, I have no need for those buttons and I didn't accept it. And that was the end of it. But it really depends on the person and their level of awareness, their self-awareness, their awareness of their surroundings and the people around them. One of the things that I wanted to touch on that you had mentioned before we end this video, because we're almost at that point, is that as a leader, as an employer, as a business owner, whatever position that you're in, even as an employee, there are companies who are going above and beyond. And I'm so proud of them. And I can't wait to see if the world takes on this initiative, is each individual person has a spot and not necessarily a fixed spot, but we all work in different ways. We all work in unique my business mentoring company that I just built with my business partner, we built that because one size does not fit all, right? One size does not fit all. As an employer, as an entrepreneur, as a mother, as a wife, as a whatever your title is, one size does not fit all. And we need to stop with that. So putting somebody into a position that they don't fit into, they might have the qualifications, but you can tell whether they mentally fit into that position, whether they emotionally are capable in that position, whether they're happy, right? Like the young gentleman that you were talking about, right? There is a need there. There's strengths and weaknesses. And when we focus on our skill sets and our strengths, it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. And when we understand what motivates individuals and what meets their psychological needs. We talk about 8 in the work that Toby Krechler has done in his research. And it's fascinating because it's also even true with this concept of hybrid work. Do people work at home on their own? Do they work in, right? I'm guessing based on listening to you talk about your husband, he works better in a group environment where he can have interaction.
He likes interaction, yeah.
Right? He likes interaction. So if you put him in a room by himself behind a computer, by the end of the day, you're going to need to be the person who gives him all the interaction, right? Because he's like, I'm not getting it. And so
it depends on the interaction too.
Yeah, it's gotta be fun.
Type, right? Like if he's super busy throughout the day and he doesn't get to vent or discuss his feelings or anything like that, it's like a dump when he comes home.
Yeah,
it's like he just dumps it all, right? And I'm just like, Kate, I'm here, let's go, right?
Let's go, right?
Let's have that talk, right? And it is, you're right, the partner or the people on the outside of that career definitely take that, and it's knowing your role in that. So I completely agree. All right, so anything else you'd like to add before we get going?
Actually, what I would say is feel free to reach out to me, and if you're interested in learning more about the process communication model, or you've got issues within your company, I'm a certified trainer through Krechler Communication to facilitate PCM in North America, which is awesome. But what I think is really great is I also offer a free impact and influence strategy session. So for those of you who go to my website, you'll see a link there, and book a call with me. And we can even talk through, you may have a problem with somebody at home, you may have a problem with somebody at work. Let's put together a strategy that is best for you. And I gladly offer those for free.
Absolutely. And your own company has sponsored today's episode, Nancy Michieli Coaching, and you have a webinar that you offer, and it's called Less Conflict, More Communications, and it's how leaders deal with difficult people. So anybody who's interested, definitely check that out. Link in the description. You can connect with either myself or Nancy. In the description of this episode, our contact information is there. You can check us out if you're interested in learning more. You can join us on social media. All of our links are posted below. For anybody interested in being a part of the show, either as a guest, a sponsor, or you would like to see a topic featured, please connect with us at justalivetv.com. Enter our newsletter. You can, message us through email, through Facebook. We are on 12 social media and podcasting platforms. For your availability, please like and follow and share on each of those platforms, whichever ones you're on. And we're always looking to share stories of overcoming struggles, of inclusivity, self-love, personal development, all of that. And last but not least, if you're interested in joining a community, the Women Supporting Women Network is something that I'm passionate about. It is promotional free, and it is healthy communication, judgment-free space for women to hold each other accountable, share our wins, our losses, and just build each other up, because we're all at different stages and you never know when you're going to want help. So come and join us there. All right. Well, thank you so much, Nancy, for joining me. I have thoroughly enjoyed this episode, and we'll definitely have to get people your way.
Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. All right, Just a Family, that is the end of today's episode. I wish you a lot of love, a lot of acceptance and judgment-free space. I wish and hope that you have healthy communication in your workspace, no matter where that is, no matter what you're doing or what position you hold. You will always find a judgment-free, safe space with us at Just Alive TV. So I'm Melissa Krechler. I'm your host, and I will see you on the next episode. Bye.